So this is an extension of a study that Laura, Claire and myself started on, where we started to look at the metrics about assessments. And it consequently led on to this Moodle development, which I'll be sharing with you now in a second, okay? So from our perspective, we looked at assessment. We were getting a lot of complaints from staff and from students that they were getting assessment overload. Now, I personally was of the viewpoint that it was bad planning of assessment rather than assessment overload. But of course, you couldn't correct a lecturer nor a student because they're obviously always right. But we looked at the literature. We started to get a key couple of papers together. But the one that stuck out for me most was from 2015 from Holland, where it was the assessment arms race, where everybody else pretty much thought their assessment was more important than their colleagues. And the challenge that we had from a programmatic approach was it was very much every module was each individual lecturer's kingdom. And there was very little communication between them. And it did even vary from program to program, where in some cases the program chair was excellent and collated all the data, and in other cases, let's just say they weren't as excellent, and that would be polite about it. But students and staff both claimed they were overworked, and because, as we know, assessment drives learning, we wanted to actually improve that process. So we looked at a particular program in the business school, and we looked across a number of different faculties, but here's just one. And we were able to see that of the program, and this is of several different modules, 6 different modules in total, there were 9 assessments. And that's not over-assessment, by no stretch of the imagination. But the problem was that 55% of the assessments were in the same week. And indeed, if you expand it to a 2-week period, there was 77% of the assessments were within a 2-week period. So that's why the perception had some grounding, let's just say, because all the assessments were together. And we did have some module coordinators or program coordinators who were going around feverishly at the start of term, collecting an Excel spreadsheet or collating an Excel spreadsheet with all of the assignment dates in, where their colleagues would say, well, I'm going to assess in week 7, I'm going to assess in week 6, and so on. The challenge was that pretty much the day after that Excel spreadsheet was published, it was out of date because some lecturer, for whatever reason, and I'm not degrading them by any stretch of the imagination, there may be genuine reasons, they decide to change the date of their assessment or decide to change the assessment itself and break it up into 2 or 3 parts or something. So we wanted some way to get this information live. The other challenge that we had was, even if we were good enough to, and put in the time and effort to collate this data and present a chart like this, and for example, if I was lecturing with Kenji and Kenji decided to reorganize his assessment, he would look at this calendar first and see, right, well, I'll go for week 6 or I'll go for week 10. There's nothing there. But even if we had that, we had no visibility on the assessment detail. And just to give you an example, the type of detail that we'd like to see would be something along the lines of whether it's a presentation, whether it's an essay, whether it's a reflection, and so on. So we wanted to drill down into that data a little bit more, just so we could get that overview. And indeed that other lecturers could have that overview as to what's happening. Because again, in some programs, not all, we were finding there was too much group work or too little group work, or indeed too many presentations or too many essays, and so on. And we weren't getting that programmatic approach to assessment. So what I'm about to show you now is the same graph from the previous slide, but we've changed it by putting in these icons, these legends, and it'll give you a new picture essentially. And what we were able to see was that there was weekly participation grades handed out, but if we look at week 8, there was a star. So let's see what the star is. It says it's a reflection. So there's a reflection in week 8 and it's worth 5%. There is a cross. Let's see what the cross is. That's an essay. So in week 9, there's an essay worth 35%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. So then when we started putting on all the rest, we could actually see, because of that volume of the icons there, we can very clearly see there's a lot of group work in this particular program. And actually, when you do the numbers, we could, the students could, if they wanted to, if they were of that way of thinking, they could do very little participation in group work, but actually still, because of the benefits of their colleagues, they would actually pass the module. So that was the first glance that we had at a programmatic view as to what is happening and where the assessments break down. Again, the challenge is, how do we make this data live so lecturers can have this informed decision? We're also looking at, if we look at just week 8 and we have all of those assessments that are in there, and quite heavily weighted assessments, but maybe it's not a problem, because maybe they were given the deadline in week 1. It's not as if we just told them, surprised them in week 7 that actually by the end of next week you need to have 5 assessments submitted. So we needed more detail, not just a type of assessment, not just a weighting, but also the when it started and when it finished. Okay. This is another variation of the same graph, where we wanted to take into account the final exam marks, because again, week 14 is when the students actually have ended the semester, and if they're end of semester exams. So within a very short period of time, they have a huge amount of assessments. We did the same in the Faculty of Health. We ended up getting 22 assessments. And again, you've got the spread here. I'm not saying that this spread is better than the business school spread or vice versa. What we wanted to do was to have this information at hand. This took an awful lot of digging around from our perspective. Again, a breakdown of the marks here, and we'll see it's more heavily weighted towards group work in terms of 50%, 50%, and 50%, all of which are group work. So you could do very well in your module through group work, but then again, if group work is a bad experience for you, you could actually do very, very poorly. So I want to come out to a demo and show you what we've done to try collate this information and make it easily visible for the lecturer and make sure it is live. Now, too many tabs open here, so it may take a second. Here we go. Right. So just to explain what you're seeing on the screen now at the moment, what you are seeing is or what you will see as soon as it loads up for me. Here we go. What you're seeing is a graph which we have the week of the 30th of September, 7th of October, 14th, and so on. Here you will see that there are, just to explain the layout of the graph, you have 3 assignments in the week of the 7th, and you also have 1 quiz. Is that clear?
Yep.
Yeah. And of course, here we can see we have 1 assignment, and so on. There's a little bit of a gap in this week, and then there's a gap here, and so on. So what it allows us to do, and how we have done this, if we think the module is called the assignment demo, the program is called English 101, every module that is associated with that program is given a tag. And then we can run the report on the basis of a tag. So we can pull together, now once we tag each module, and we developed a plugin to do this, to tag each module with the program code. And from our student record system, that program code is unique. So we know that we're getting clean data. And every time a lecturer puts an assessment up into Moodle, they will actually get this graph updated, because their module page is automatically tagged for them by our student record system. All the lecturer needs to do is to add an assignment, and you know how easy that is. Turn on editing, add assignment, stick in your dates, and you're done. This calendar will be populated. Okay. What happens then, you may have a case of there is a module that's maybe taught across 2 programs or 3 programs. So essentially you would have on that module, you would have 2 or 3 tags. And you can, if you wish, decide to remove that tag from the viewpoint. And I'll just do an example with the quiz here. If you remove that thing, it will refresh the graph. It's just taking a second there, refreshing the graph, and presents the assignment calendar for them. It would do that in exactly the same way if this module had another program tag up here, and you could filter it just in that case. You can, of course, show the course data as to where it came from, where they're all broke down in, but you can also look at it by a breakdown of the table, be it in a week's view, or where the assignments are coming from. So here's module 1, module 2, module 3, and module 4, and then here's where all the assignments are. And when you come through into the week view, and again, I'll just take a second just to upload. But when you come through into the week view, you can filter it off and see what the assignment is as well by rolling it over, because it will show the, let me see, it should show the assessment breakdown. Of course, that's what they say about doing a live demonstration. Never do that or work with children. Let's just refresh that here for a second and see. What it's done for us now, how it's got people using Moodle, is their program coordinator, that good diligent staff member that we all have, the sucker that ends up being volunteered for all the jobs, or doesn't take a step back when everybody else does, when people, your head of school is asking for jobs. They used to have to collate all of this information manually and make those phone calls or send those emails. Whereas now they're turning around and they're saying, put your assignment details into Loop, or into Moodle. Loop is our local name. Put them into Moodle and it will be displayed and collated for me. So the direction for them is they're actually turning around and saying to the head of school, my job would be an awful lot easier as program coordinator if we could have an encouragement from you to say, put all your assignments in, because we want to see this programmatic calendar. And then when that direction comes from the program coordinator and from the head of school, and they're told that at a very basic level, all they need to do is go into their module, add an assignment, and add in the closing dates, opening dates and closing dates. They tend to do it. What we've also done then is we go into those schools and into those program teams and say, well, because you have put up the assignment, now we don't have to worry about we don't have to worry about the administration element of your assignment, because all of the details are uploaded through the Moodle interface, and we start boasting about all the good features and benefits they will have. But because they've been made to use the assignment or strongly encouraged by their head of school, it's then we start opening their eyes as to the benefits that are open. But if they use Moodle more extensively, we don't start pushing the online grading. We go in nice and soft and gentle with them, with all of that information. But we start to say, well, you can have user overrides for extensions, or you can cut it off and be very clinical on your deadline. You can see when students are submitting, and we start just drip feeding them with all the information. And then the sort of pièce de resistance, for want of a better expression, the one to push the non-believers over the line, without meaning to sound too much like an evangelist, was what we done was we developed an additional plugin which took the assignment information from the gradebook, the final grade from the gradebook, and integrated it directly into our student record system. So we looked at the pain that lecturers were having at the end of every semester, where they used to have to take their grades from their Excel spreadsheets or from their diaries, or indeed from Moodle, and manually put them into the student record system. Whereas now, because of all of these little bits and pieces we've added in to Moodle, it streamlines their whole administration workload. It's made their life easier, made it much more transparent to the individual student, and it meant from a programmatic point of view, we're getting a much clearer picture as to the student experience. We also, because we have, and because Moodle has the built-in analytics data, we can see, well, all the assignments are up there. How are we getting on? Are students actually submitting later? Are they submitting on time? Is a student making a submission late in several modules, or is it just one? And we use the My Feedback plugin built by UCL to actually analyze all of this data. So all of this comes from if a staff member puts up the assignment into Moodle. and we just start giving them loads of reasons as to why they should do that. And they don't even have to be that technical to do it. We just make life easier for them and say, we'll take the pain of the administration stuff away to allow you concentrate on your teaching. Let us do that. All we ask of you is to put your assignment information into Moodle. And that's it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. That report has made their life easier. That integration with our student record system has made our life easier. Everything has just worked quite smoothly by taking the pain out of what the lecturers have to do or are required to do as part of their programmatic, as part of their lecturing requirements.